Stacey Ashley here, and thanks to those who are also watching the recorded session. What I wanted to focus on today is really a couple of quick tips to get people out of busy and overwhelm. And in particular, what I've been hearing from people who are working with CEOs themselves, is they too are feeling a little bit like they're in busy and overwhelm. And so as we come into this new year, I thought I would just share with you a couple of really simple foundation strategies to get you set up for success. So if you're a CEO, this is about you, and then fostering this to all the people around you. And equally, of course, for leaders at all levels, you can do the same thing for yourself and for your people, because I really want you to focus on your leadership, creating the space to lead so that you can all be super successful with ease and grace, rather than getting stuck in this treadmill of busy and overwhelmed. So I'm hoping that this will be super helpful for you. The first thing, though, is I really want to share just a couple of thoughts. I have seen a few, not everyone, but I've seen a few CEOs slipping back into work that they've previously done and been successful at. So they've sort of gone back to being on the tools, if you like. And I think that that is not a recipe for success. Your role as the CEO is to lead now and to lead in the future. And the more time you spend on the tools, the less time you're spending in the leadership space. And that makes it hard for everybody else in your organization, because what we're doing is we're kind of creating a cap or a lid. If we're only operating, at the doing level, so is everyone else. If we lift up and operate in the leading space, then everybody gets to elevate, and that creates opportunity for people to step into their potential, use their strengths, all the things that we want people to do, to be more engaged, to interact, to collaborate. But whilever we're placing that lid on them because we are in the doing space, makes it really hard for you individually, as a team and as an organization, to achieve those very important goals. So what I wanted to do is to just share a really simple idea that was really kind of indoctrinated into me. I guess my dad used to talk about it a lot when I was a kid and a teenager, and it really resonates with me because I think it provides real clarity to the role of leaders, particularly very senior leaders who need to let go of being the experts and become the leaders. And it's the idea that performance is an outcome of potential less the interference. So let me just pop that up. Performance equals potential minus interference. We know that we have potential. We know our people have potential, and our teams, and we know our organization has potential. But anything that creates interference has an impact, and it impacts the opportunity for performance to take place. So anything that creates an obstacle, a challenge, some friction, some tension, any of those things is interference. So the role of a CEO is not to get in there and do the doing, but rather to remove the interference. The role of the CEO or a senior leader or a team leader, really, this can cascade into any kind of leadership, is to remove the interference and create the opportunity for that potential to turn into performance. And again, with ease and grace. We don't want everything to be hard. We want it to be easier. And in a world of flux and change and really significant technological advancement and conflict and economic uncertainty and all those things that we're battling with, let's make things, where we can, as easy as possible. And so the role of the CEO is to remove interference. Now, that can take all sorts of forms. It could be tactical, about how do we, make the ability to make decisions. How do we make that easier? How do we delegate authority? It could be something like that. But what I'm finding is that it's the big picture stuff, or the lack of big picture stuff, actually, that is creating the interference for people. Imagine working in a team somewhere in your organization and not having real clarity about what we're really focused on as an organization. If I don't know what's important to this organization, then how do I focus on the right things in my role? And so that creates interference because maybe I don't do the right things. Maybe I procrastinate. Maybe I ask quite a few people about what I should be working on and I get different answers. That's interference. And so my ability to perform at the highest level is compromised to some degree. And so the role of the CEO is to create that clarity. It is to create the vision, or to lead the process of creating the vision for the future. Making sure that the organisation is on purpose and is supporting the why of its existence, and having a vision to actually execute on that, and then developing or leading the process to develop the strategy that allows us to implement the things that will achieve the vision and embody the purpose of the organization. Without that vision, without that strategy, people don't know what to do. They may think they know what to do, but they don't necessarily. And so I think it's really important that as CEOs, as senior leaders, we get into the right space, not doing, but leading. So removing the interference, creating clarity through the vision, through the strategy, through the clear business initiatives and the clear goals that you have, and making sure that that is cascaded and messaged really clearly into the rest of your organization. Because without that, people don't necessarily know what they should be focused on. And so you're not contributing to removing that interference. Clarity, clear goals, clear measures of success, and the initiatives to support those things is removing the interference. So that's the first thing. As CEOs, let's get ourselves in the space where we're not being the expert of everything. We are in the business of creating the future. And that starts today by removing the interference. So that's the first thing that I wanted to share with you. But how do CEOs do that? How do they get into that space of not being the expert, not being in overwhelm, not having all of those conflicting things coming in, everyone needing our attention, the information overload, all of those things. Last year, I was speaking to one of my CEOs, and they had been in their CEO role for about 12 or 14 months at that point. And it was really interesting. And I have a lot of admiration for this individual because they're an exceptional leader. But what she said to me was, the most interesting thing for her has been that in her role as a CEO, she's actually been less busy than in previous roles. She's got more space to think and, to create and to really spend time with her people, of course, her executive team, but others in the organization as well, to really help them to blossom and to develop and to have the great conversations that really open up their world to the opportunity that they have to lead. And what she put it down to is that she's very clear on her role as a CEO, and her role as a CEO is not to do, it's to lead. And I really loved that from her, because clearly she was doing an amazing job, because the organization was hitting all of its targets, exceeding all of its targets, being a real leader in the industry, was very commercially successful. The people were highly engaged. It was just a really wonderful kind of case study, if you like. So I think hearing that, in reality, CEOs can create that space to be the leader, to create the future, to remove the interference, is really powerful. So how do you do it as a leader? And I think there's there's just two ideas that I want to share with you today that I think, if you can embrace them, could be very profound and life-changing in terms of not just your work, but in fact your broader life. But it requires discipline, and I think that is one of the other things that I really admire about this individual, is they're very clear on their role, and they're also ruthlessly disciplined about sticking to their role. And that creates space for other people, to grow into their respective portfolios, and to contribute at their highest level. And so sometimes we ourselves are the interference because we're actually playing in someone else's space. If we're the CEO and we're trying to be the COO, or if we're the CEO and we're trying to be the head of technical development, or whatever it might be, then we're actually encroaching on other people's space, and we in fact are the interference. So there's lots of great reasons to stick to your knitting, be the CEO, be the thinker, be the creator, be the the crafter of the future. Yes, leverage all the people around you, of course, get input, but you are the person that needs to lead those activities and thinking. So how do we do it? The first thing is that really it comes down to recognizing that is your role. Where do I have the most impact? Where do I offer unique value? How can I make the most difference? It is by being the leader, right? That's your role. That's the thing that only you can do because you're the person in that role. And again, cascade it down the organization, executive leaders, senior leaders, middle leaders, emerging leaders, team leaders. You have a role, and it may not be exclusively to lead. You may have to do some doing as well, but get the balance right and then do your role. Let's go back to the CEO. Your role is to lead that visioning, to lead that strategy, to remove the interference, to set the path, to message that out to everyone. Yes, there's a whole lot of other things you do, of course. Keep your board happy, keep your shareholders happy, keep your customers happy, but you've got lots of people to help you with that as well. So get clear on the things that only you can do to add value, and then focus exclusively on them. Be very, very clear about this is what you do and this is what you do not do. So have that to don't list. There are things that you don't do, which, for example, is your executive team's roles. You don't do those because you've got an executive team to do that. You do your role and you don't do everything else. And so get really clear. Eliminate the busy. Eliminate things that are not a priority for you, and be really clear. So that's the first thing. Where do you add the most impact? Focus exclusively on that. And that will be not just the visioning and the strategy, but it will be developing your people, really creating opportunities for people to grow their capability, to grow their accountability. That's another key role for you. So that's the first thing. Get clear on it. So brainstorm it out and then have a look at your diary and see what doesn't match. And then you can start eliminating so that you've got the space to do this important leadership work. The second thing, of course, is to, once you understand what those boundaries are, what you do, what you do not do, then really enforce them. And that can be everything from when you are available, the channels of communication that you are open to, that when people can get FaceTime with you, all of those things, like be really clear. It's a red rope policy, and there's only certain things that get inside that red rope to work with you in your space. And there are other things that just do not cross that boundary, because otherwise you can't do the important work of leading your organization, leading your people, leading the future. So that's the second key thing. And when you think about that, for example, years ago when I was a productivity consultant, one of the ideas that was shared with me that I think has real value is that for CEOs in particular and very senior leaders is to really, really hold their time preciously, because there's a limited amount of it, and recognize the preciousness of it. And so there was often suggestions of things like, and you can have your own version of this, is don't become available for meetings until 9:30 or 10 o'clock in the morning, because then if something really important comes up, you've got a bit of space for it. Or that might be your exercise time, or it might be the time that you proactively reach out to others and make all of your really important phone calls. So you actually, really create exclusion zones in your own calendar for the things that are important, or preserve some time for things to come up that are important, and you really hold those boundaries strongly. And if you have an EA, it's their job to hold those boundaries for you as well. Doesn't mean that there's not exceptions, but we have to have the boundary in place in the first instance in order to be able to make an exception. So this is about, recognizing you're a limited resource, a limited precious asset. Need to look after yourself. And so the boundaries really help you to do that. So with those two concepts, firstly, really understand your role and focus on the high impact, value adding difference you can make activity. And secondly, hold those boundaries, really enforce them. When do you take phone calls? When do you look at email? When are you available for instant messaging or not? And hold them. How many hours a week do you work? Hold it. And as a little sideline, I would also say clear the clutter, because clutter is just distracting and it's inefficient and those sort of things. So that's a little bonus, but really enforce the boundaries. I think that those two things will get you into the space where you have and create the space to lead, to do the important aspects of your role. And this is how you get out of busy and overwhelmed. Don't try and do everything. It's not your job to do everything. It's your job to do the CEO role, to lead yourself, your people, and your organization into the future. And help your leaders to also recognize what is their important role and to stick to that and not to do the other stuff. Some things will get delegated, some things won't happen at all, some things will get delayed. We have to make choices. That is part of being the CEO, is to make the choices that support what you, your organization, your people are here to do in the first place, to live the purpose of the organization. So I would love to know your thoughts. If you've got any questions, pop them in the comments, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon. So I'll say goodbye for now.